Brought to you by Trauma Informed LA, Our Stories Matter presents Season 5, We Will Dance Again. I'm Associate Professor Susie Hess, joined by Dr. Mary Barr-Halpern. Together, we arrived in Israel in the wake of the October 7th massacre to bear witness to a mosaic of trauma, resilience, and resistance in a region at war, and an American academic world shaken by rising hate. This season, we delve into the raw, often untold stories of Jews, Arabs, and Christians, revealing journeys of hope and strength. Our mission is to build a bridge of compassion and understanding through trauma toward post-traumatic growth. How do we rise from trauma to forge a path of healing and resilience in a fractured world? Join us as we find out. Welcome, Mary Alice. Mary Alice Legrand holds a JD degree from Columbia Law School, class of 2024. A German native, she holds a BA in History and a Master in Economic Law from Sciences Po Paris, as well as a Master in Law and International Management from HEC Paris. She is admitted to the Paris Bar Association. After October 7th, she co-founded the Law Students Against Antisemitism student organization at Columbia Law School. Well, I'm super happy to have you and just to learn about your experience and just, what has been happening, I guess, from October 7th moving forward, if that's okay to start there, of where you were.
I was in New York City that day. Actually, a good friend of mine was visiting the city to celebrate her birthday. So me and my fiance, we spent the day with her. It was strange because you would get those notifications on your phone. So it was very strange, kind of navigating like a cheerful birthday, so to speak, was challenging.
And did you have any idea of what was about to begin in this country?
So I think on October 7th, I was dissociating a little bit. So I was in this bubble. I was not really on my phone. I knew what was going on, but I just I have the privilege as a non-Jewish person who doesn't have family in Israel to escape it. But then on Sunday, when I was, okay, now I'm going back to reality and actually look what's happened or what's going on. And that was devastating and very heartbreaking. I also saw some footage that Hamas took. I don't think I've seen everything, but right from the beginning, I sort of saw a lot. Yeah, and I remember for the first 2 weeks after, I was in constant contact with a good friend of mine who lives in Tel Aviv. So it was very, very strange to have someone that you love texting you from bomb shelters, and while at the same time also looking at the footage. I think that's almost incomprehensible as someone who has the privilege of never had to experience war, or what that's like when you actually fear for your life. Because I grew up in Germany, and I've only lived in countries where that were never affected by war.
Fascinating, because I am also hearing, and then I see Mary has thoughts. It's fascinating because being German, I think about how far Germany has become in terms of really never again. And, to me, it's interesting that you're not Jewish, you're not from Israel, you're from Germany, where people would think it would be a different experience because of what happened in the Holocaust. But what Germany has learned, which I have followed, is never again really is never again in Germany.
Yeah. There's something to be said about even as someone who I am really committed to fighting against anti-Semitism. I had so much to learn about the history of the Mizrahi Jews in the Middle East and the broader region. I did not learn about anything in school or elsewhere, and no newspaper did I ever read about their history, their faith. So I think there's also a huge, especially in this context, today's context, there's a huge misconception about what anti-Semitism is, rightfully the Shoah, of course, has to take the front and center stage when it comes to really understanding the evil of anti-Semitism and how it really, what it can lead to. Like that, I'm not negating it whatsoever, but I do think that it's a problem that we don't understand how broad the issue is and how that the Shoah did not happen in a vacuum, right? Like it took decades to it's just like an evil that is really old. But when you look what was common to say, what was like socially acceptable in the to say in the late 19th century, mid 19th century, you can already see there's a form of that's just like anti-Semitism was always there. It just like it got worse and worse and worse and worse. So I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, this evil person Hitler came to power, and then he just this like mass psychosis and mass hysteria sort of broke out, and then they murdered so many Jews. I mean, that's correct, but it's just like important to understand that it's a very deep rooted issue that can absolutely, like, I'm an optimist. Like I'm really an optimist. So I really think that we are able to fight it and to end it, but it's important to really understand just like the scale and that it's not only a European problem, right? I mean, it existed prior, like pogroms were occurring throughout history in different places of the world, including the Middle East.
What you're describing is very interesting, right? Because people think it's just Germany, just like you think it's just Israel. Do you see the parallels? I mean, is there a part of you who looks about what's happening right now around the world, Iran and Lebanon and, I don't know, Russia, whatever it is, like all the countries, do you see any parallels to what was going on back then in the Holocaust? Or in different words, do you think it might happen again?
Unfortunately, so that's something that has been very, very disturbing and difficult for me to sort of accept, was that yes, I did study the Shoah. Yes, I studied about anti-Semitism, but still there was always this part of me that's like, I still do not understand how can like regular people commit these monstrous crimes and just like have absolutely no compassion and like not an ounce of compassion for their neighbor, for their friend. I mean, especially in Germany, the German Jews were so assimilated. They were really completely part of society. They were not this like marginalized community, completely ostracized. Like that was not the case at all. So I think it has been very difficult for me since October 7th to unfortunately now understand how it could have happened. So I think that really it informs who you are as a person, how you view the world, and to sort of integrate that into me still being an optimist is really a continued. Like I'm living in New York, which is a very liberal and a vibrant place where differences are usually celebrated. So to just also compare to the 1920s Germany to today is really difficult to accept that it's still after the internet where you can really educate yourself about anything, still possible for virtually the entire world to be so propagandized, filled with hatred and bias. So I think it's also important to remind ourselves that during the Second World War, many countries really had the opportunity to help Jewish people escape Europe, and they chose not to. So I think it's really important to also remind ourselves that at the time, the world was propagandized. I'm not saying that they are responsible to the extent that Germany is responsible, but still it's important to remind ourselves that the media and just like common public opinion was really propagandized. So that's what we're seeing today, which really freaks me out.
Mary and I talk about this a lot in terms of how can this person who has all these degrees not to have critical thinking? And it almost feels like this cult mentality. Like, how are some people able to decipher and have critical thinking and really think about the history like you? And like, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not Jewish. I mean, I know Jews who are anti-Semitic, and it's just, yeah, it's really surprising to me. And then something else that, you were talking about so many things that was so interesting. So at USC, I was on the DEI committee, and this was before October 7th. And then October 7th happened. And of course, I was like, why are we not talking about anti-Semitism? Why are we not talking about this? And I was talking to a colleague, Dr. Michal Moore-Barak, who her research is on global diversity versus DEI, because what she talks about is DEI is so focused on America. It's focused on how America was founded. But in the world, it means something different. So, for example, there's Jew hatred in every single country. When we think of Israel, the majority of people are people of color, but most people don't even know that. And so, a Black man or woman who goes to Israel, and they talk about, we're going to have a guest who was just in Israel, and he was like, I felt more safe and more accepted as a Black man in Israel than I am as a Black man in America. And so you start thinking about how schools are teaching or not teaching history, and how people are not critical thinkers. And I'm so interested in what motivated you as an ally to sort of start rising up at Columbia, because Columbia, I mean, that was super scary witnessing what was happening.
So before I answer your question, I would, from what I understand today, and perhaps in 2 weeks or 2 years, I'll have a better understanding that this phenomena of highly educated people, brilliant people, really, I know them, who are just not really able. I'm not going to say they're unable to think critically. I think they are able to think critically, but they just, to some extent, don't choose not to, because and I think today, also, I think it's important to distinguish between anti-Semitism on the far right, which is sort of how I would say like the progressive left view it. Okay, anti-Semitism, that's like right-wing nationalism, like in Germany is really bad. Like we hate that type of anti-Semitism. But yes, I agree that's really bad. But at the same time, it's important to understand that's only one form of anti-Semitism, especially when we talk about the context in the US. Today's real big issue of anti-Semitism comes from the left. It's really a worldview, and it's really an ideology where, because of certain very public intellectuals like Foucault, who is read widely in places like Columbia, really reduce the world to oppressed and the oppressor. So it's, I think, especially for young people, a very intriguing concept, because it's simple and people like to think simple things, and there's like a very easy distinction between good and evil. Okay, evidently the oppressed people are good and the oppressors always evil. And it's also, yes, there are mechanisms in this country at present where there really is systemic discrimination against Black people and against Jews and against other people as well. But it's been very difficult to sort of comprehend how even very prominent scholars and brilliant classmates are able to shut off that part of their brain and just really focus on that worldview according to which Israel is in their moral universe is just the evil, this evil entity where you can project anything that is wrong with humanity onto it, which is a common phenomena of anti-Semitism throughout time has been the case. So that's also what we see today. So we don't like racism. Okay, they're racist. We don't like white colonial settlers. Of course, they're white colonial settlers. What to me has really absurd is to understand that propaganda, those catchphrases like ethnic cleansing, genocide, and so on, that's literally Soviet Union propaganda from the 70s. So it's almost lazy to see how this propaganda machine has not worked worked up like new ways to spread lies and spread hate, but it's really old. To your question, what has motivated me to become so active at Columbia? On October 9th, which was the Monday after October 7th, I really expected to go to school and see an outpouring of support for the Jewish student body, which is fortunately quite present, quite very. It's significant. There are numerous Jewish students at Columbia Law School and at Columbia University, which is it's a privilege for the university. It just like makes learning better if you have people, in my opinion, just like with different experiences, right? Lived realities, whatever they look like. I'm a little bit tired of reducing everything to identity. Just like people with different realities, if you put them together in one room, I think it's easier to solve problems if that rather than just like having a very homogenous group of people who all are from like the same social economic background and the whatever. I think you know what I'm trying to say. Instead, what happened was that numerous student organizations, in around 20 student organizations, perhaps even more, sent out statements in which they did not mention Hamas and in which they put the blame on the Hamas attack on the individuals, well, on Israel. So they did not state any support, any empathy, any compassion whatsoever for the citizens. To me, that really shocked me. That it really rocked my world in that sense, because the people who subscribed, who sent out those statements, those organizations, their leaders, I know them to be very committed to to human rights, right, for everyone, and to see that Jews were so deliberately excluded was really disturbing. And also something to be said about how I have friends at Columbia Law School who lost family members, who lost friends on October 7th, who had friends being kidnapped, who were released during the first hostage deal, and friends, because it was a holiday, right, friends who were in Israel on October 7th. So it really could have been them. And to just witness such a callous response with complete, to me, it was just pure hatred and pure dehumanization, which clearly has been boiling under the surface. But me as a non-Jewish person, I just have the privilege of not having to perceive it or to deal with it. So I think it's important also to take accountability, because I had, like, prior to October 7th, I had conversations with friends who was just casually dropping that they were anti-Zionist, and me choosing to immediately change the conversation to not have to confront them or confront the issue and then having to draw consequences. Because to me, there's no way in which it is acceptable to deny the right to live in safety and, yes, with self-determination to only one group of people. To me, that is morally inconsistent.
I told Susie you're brilliant, but talking to you again, I realized like how brilliant you are. But you know what really shine is your compassion and empathy and ability to mentalize other people. I mean, when you were talking about what happened on the 9th, that's before Israel even responded. We were still trying to identify bodies, right? So having that reaction was so invalidating. Susan and I talk often about like this traumatic invalidation. Like they took away our ability to grieve because we went straight to defend why we need to respond. And, I had a patient that was going to Columbia, and she said that she lost so many friends, including roommates, because exactly what she said, it's not just October 7th. There was the blame of, if you're standing with Israel, you're a horrible person. We want nothing to do with you. So relationship that were built for years, or people who work together in a lab, just ruined that relationship.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I'm not going to say unfortunately. I mean, like, I personally do not want to be associated in any way whatsoever with people who do not condemn the Hamas attacks, and with people who do not express their full compassion and support for the victims of October 7th. And yeah, for people who think that Israel has no right to exist as a Jewish nation state. To me, I'm not going to say it's unfortunate because I really don't want, no. To me, that doesn't fit with how I see the world or how I see humans. Yeah, but it was really disorienting after October 7th to virtually lose. I mean, at the law school, lose, apart from one friend, lose all my friends. That was, I did not expect that. And on the other side, I made so many new friends, and I'm very fortunate that the Jewish community sort of adopted me as their friendly Gentile. And I feel very blessed for those new friendships and those new experiences.
What are some maybe strategies that you can recommend? Because we have allies, but people don't know how to maybe innovate or create what you've created at Columbia. So I'm wondering if you can sort of walk us through how you started the movement to dismantle anti-Semitism and maybe recommendations for other schools.
So it really started from a very selfish place because I was just so heartbroken after October 7th and the reactions on October 9th that I just felt, okay, well, I can have arguments with these student leaders on the public social media channel, so to speak, where you can have those chats. Of course, some Jewish students are going to feel supported, that's great, but I still felt like I was not doing enough. Because just the hurt was and continues to be very, very deep. So for me, also selfishly, I really fell into a depression after October 7th. Everything I took for granted, or everything I assumed, just crumbles. So I really had to completely rebuild sort of my understanding of humans, of the world, of my political beliefs also, because I'm a queer woman of color, so not naturally, but up until that point, I was very much associated myself with this very, very, very progressive group. In my opinion, I think they don't deserve to call themselves progressive because there's nothing progressive about them. So to me, the next step really was, okay, I have 6 or 7 months left at Columbia. Anti-Semitism gets worse by the day. There's a normalization of hate, of hate speech, of propaganda, of lies, of exclusion. All of this is being normalized, and it just gets worse. So I really thought, okay, what's a useful time? How can I usefully use my time? Because just being sad at home is not going to change anything. So I thought, well, student organization, also given my background, I do really think that educating is important about the different forms of anti-Semitism, both historic and contemporary ones. I had a really great board, really, really smart, brilliant, passionate people, both Jewish and non-Jewish, because to me that was also, I saw that sort of a lack of opportunity for allies to really support the Jewish community, just because, especially, and again, the US, they love all the affinity groups, right? Which affinity groups are great, don't get me wrong, but still it just feels a little bit weird to say, well, I'm not Jewish, but can I come to your events and show my support, at some point I just did that, and they also welcomed me. But I think just structurally, given that it is not it's not anti-Semitism is not only an issue on an individual level, and it's not, unfortunately, also not just an issue amongst the student body. It's an issue amongst the faculty. It's an issue amongst the administration. So it's really, really systematic and systemic. Getting approved by the Student Senate, I'm sure you can still find some articles online about that, was really an uphill battle, thanks to media attention and thanks to alumni who got really upset by the fact that we were the only student organization that got denied. Yeah, once we got approved, we were able, especially moving forward, and the next semester starts in September, they're really able to organize events with interesting speakers to just educate, and also provide a sense of community, for people who just like do not agree with how things are going, how things are developing in this country, worldwide, and especially at the law school, and who also, perhaps like me, also needed new friends, need new friends. So I think that's also something that can be, like, my hope is that it will be replicated across universities and across college campuses. I do think it's a great model to say, well, this is not a Jewish organization. This is for everyone. We don't care who you are, what your political beliefs is, what your identity is. We do not care. We just come together because we are curious. We want to learn. We want to understand. We want to have a positive impact. I think that can really be replicated across learning institutions, and hopefully in like some other version of it also in professional environments, because I assume that it's an issue that we can also see in bigger companies such as Microsoft.
Oh, everywhere, 100%. So what I've heard you saying, and I would love to have the links to the articles, because where we have the podcast, we're going to have links to different things. There is a part of it is making new connections, which Susie loves hearing. That's one of her pivots about connections and humanity. Diversity. So it's not just Jewish people, and we know that anti-Semitism is not just, it's hate, right? Whatever it is anti-Semitism, there's other forms of hate as well. So there is the connection, there is a diversity, true diversity between people with different realities, like you're saying, not just identities. The psychoeducation piece, which is so important, having events to come together, and a place where people can feel a sense of support and belonging. I think that's huge. And the fact that it was denied initially is mind-blowing to me, and at the same time not surprising, because we were trying to have somewhat of a similar initiative between hospitals here. And at first it was like, no, we need to jump through so many hoops. So we're just like, okay, so we're just going to do it. But the idea that there is something about, if you fight anti-Semitism, well, then you have to be also pro-Israel. You have to be a bad person. You have to be a Zionist. Like, there's something about how people lump it all together, which is crazy in its sense, but also being seen as something evil and negative.
Yeah, so I think in general, it's a sort of a reminder that sometimes the if you want to do the most good, you have to take the path with the most resistance. So I think that it's really important to, I wish it wasn't the case, but I think it's important to also rely on all stakeholders, not just the ones who are working or who are student, like the current student body, also really integrate any kind of stakeholder in a strategy to get up and running and to not have constant obstacles. I'm talking about, of course, in the university can be alumni, but I think it's also important to not be shy to use lawyers. Like, they do serve a purpose now and then. Speaking as a lawyer, but no, that was a joke. But yeah, getting legal counsel, because there's a very high chance that they are infringing upon their rights, and that they are sort of acting outside of what they are authorized to do if they deny you or if they impose obstacles. So getting legal counsel, I think there are numerous law firms who since October 7th have offered their services pro bono. And yeah, also not being shy to be public about it if that's an opportunity, if that's possible. I know sometimes it's always a very delicate issue of getting the media involved, but at some point I think it's also important to acknowledge, there are a lot of people who really care about this and who will be upset, and to use sort of external pressure, and of course like being very, very well prepared, like really being over prepared, unfortunately. Yeah, that general observation, yes, if you fight against anti-Semitism, like, I'm very, very proud Zionist, so I have absolutely no issue of being called, oh yeah, you're just pro-Israel, you're a Zionist. As we can see, there is a really strong link between a rise of anti-Semitism and anything that happens in Israel. So to sort of say, well, you're fighting anti-Semitism because you're fighting sort of for Israel. So it's also, it's a little bit absurd, because use this very common tactic of double, deny, attack, reverse, victim and offender, right? So they are enmeshing their fight against Israel with anti-Semitism.
I love you said that. After October 7th, it was in November at USC, we invited someone to speak about anti-racism. Well, then October 7th happened, and I'm like, hey, can you recognize what happened on October 7th? Not only did they not respond to my multiple emails, they chose during that training not to say anything, as if it never happened. And I appreciate your voice so much, because I felt for years and years, I was an advocate for everyone who was not me. And I thought that was going to happen for me now, and it didn't. And so I am just so grateful for you for speaking out and, dismantling, conflating Jewish people with the policies or government that you may criticize, that we all criticize, is Jew hatred. And so I am so appreciative of you on so many levels. I mean, I hope that you're going to be one of my newfound friends like Mary. And Mary and we have two final questions for you. So the first one that we ask for everybody, it's the same two last questions, is what will you do this week for your own healing and growth?
So first off, this is a very good question. Right now, I'm not in school, so I'm not in this hostile environment, bombarded by emails and messages around the clock. So that's also something to say, that right now it's very easy, right? Like I have the privilege of I'm not confronted with this, right? Like, of course, like I read the news, I friends in Israel, but I think it's also important to sort of distinguish that like taking care of yourself while you are constantly in this like extremely, extremely unhealthy and toxic environment I don't think I could have done this another year. I don't know what I would have done, honestly. Like it was really, really difficult. But now I think just integrating moments of joy, whatever that looks like. I think for me it's exercise. I love spending time with my friends. I love listening to podcasts, or just like whatever it is that brings you joy. Really be intentional about it and be present while you're giving yourself that moment. And I think it really needs to be a daily habit. Whatever it is, it can be something small, splurge on the extra guacamole, whatever it is. Just like really be intentional about like, I don't even like spoiling yourself in some way whatsoever. I'm really being in your joy, because I think that's something that I really admire about the Israeli culture. Like joy is the strongest form of resistance, like you call your podcast "We Will Dance Again." Like joy is resistance.
Oh my God. I love that. First of all, I'm going to have guacamole today with extra. But I mean, what you're saying, and it's something that really was very clear to me throughout this podcast, this episode, is that not only your healing journey is related to doing and being active, and that's something that, like you said, was helping you get out of the state of depression after the 7th, but it is so connected to your values and who you are as a human being. And I think when we think about healing from trauma in general, that is the goal, right? Like to help people find agency according to their values. Like this is the antidote of trauma. And what you're saying now, it's like this is one thing, and I can still get burned out because this has been so toxic. This needs to be also balanced with being mindful and bringing gratitude and enjoying the small stuff as well. Like both of them have to go together. Okay, final question. What was it like to share your story today?
Well, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure of meeting you. I really do hope that we will meet in person, that we stay connected. Like, I always love making new friends. I mean, I feel very honored that you thought of me and that you took the time to listen to me. I know I go in all directions. But yeah, I am very passionate about this, so it's difficult for me to sort of stay on track. But yeah, it was really delightful.
I appreciate your heartbeat, and I'm going to have guacamole today. I have a jalapeno, I have an avocado, and I will take with me joy is resistance. You are just a beautiful human being, and I'm so grateful for you.
Yes, please let's connect and let's stay in touch. I would really hope that.
Thank you so much, Mary Alice. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank our listeners, music composer Jonathan Bargiora, sound designer Ivan Reyes, podcast advisor Donna Fazzari, And special thanks to the Academic Engagement Network for their generous support. Today's episode is co-produced by Professor Susie Hess and Dr. Miri Bar Halprin. Our Stories Matter, We Will Dance Again is brought to you by Trauma Informed LA. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram and at our website at traumainformedla.org. Please give us 5 stars on iTunes so more folks can have access and donate to traumainformedla.org so we can keep recording and healing through our storytelling episodes.